Amara rolled off the couch and moved toward the fireplace. She pushed aside the common books, her fingers searching the dust until they hit something tucked deep into the shadows. She pulled it out. The object was a journal, bound in leather that felt unnervingly warm against her skin. It pulsed with a steady, rhythmic heat, as if a heart were beating somewhere beneath the hide. She traced the braided cord that held it shut. Just as she began to pull at the knot, the kitchen floorboards creaked. Nana stood in the doorway. The color drained from her face. A towel slipped from her grip and hit the floor, but she did not look at it. She crossed the room in 2 strides, her hand shooting out to catch Amara's wrist. Nana's voice was low, vibrating with an ancient sort of dread. "Put that down, gently. That book holds more lives than this entire street." Amara tried to pull back, but Nana's grip remained firm, her eyes locked onto the leather binding as if it were a coiled snake ready to strike. The air in the room grew heavy, the warmth from the book spreading across Amara's palms, refusing to be ignored. Nana pulled the braided cord loose. The snap of the fibers echoed like a gunshot, and the living room walls began to blur, then vanish. The scent of wood smoke and old paper was instantly replaced by the humid, river-heavy air of the Congo. The vision solidified into the Kongo Kingdom, 500 years in the past. Stone structures rose into the sky, dwarfing the imagination. The markets were a riot of movement, with traders exchanging goods under the shadow of massive, intricate stonework. King Zinga sat upon his throne, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the first sails appeared. The Portuguese ships cut through the water, battered and leaking. As the sailors stumbled onto the shore, they were gray with exhaustion, ribs pushing against their skin. The king watched them approach, his face unreadable. He signaled to his attendants. He did not see invaders. He saw men dying of hunger. He commanded that his people bring water, fruit, and roasted meat. He stepped down from his platform to meet them. The sailors collapsed into the sand, reaching for the food with trembling hands. The king watched them eat, his hands folded, believing that the measure of a kingdom was found in the mercy shown to the broken. The sailors finished their meal. They offered cheap glass beads as gifts, pressing them into the hands of their hosts with forced smiles. The king accepted the trinkets, nodding in approval. Convinced he had secured a partnership built on mutual respect, he walked back toward his palace, his posture relaxed. Inside a dimly lit hut nearby, the scene was different. A Portuguese officer hunched over a crude map, the candlelight flickering against his intense, focused gaze. He ignored the remains of the food on his table. He ignored the laughter drifting in from the market. His quill scraped across the parchment, marking river routes and strategic points. He counted the people moving through the square, his eyes narrowing as he assessed their physical strength. He dipped his quill into the ink and wrote 3 words. Ideal for labor. The ink blotted, a dark stain that seemed to swallow the page. He rolled the map tight and tucked it into his belt. Outside, the kingdom continued its work, unaware that the hospitality they had offered had been weaponized against them. The silence of the hut was colder than the night air. The officer blew out the candle, leaving the room in shadows, and stepped out into the dark to prepare for the end of the kingdom. The betrayal deepened over generations. The gates that once welcomed visitors became the channels for human chains. Nana leaned forward, her knuckles white as she gripped the journal. She pointed to a faded, jagged mark on the page. She spoke of a girl, barely 20, who stood in the center of the kingdom 2 centuries after the first ships landed. The Portuguese had forced the people to kneel in prayer, demanding submission to a foreign crown and a foreign god. The girl did not kneel. She stood tall, her shadow stretching across the dust. She raised her voice so the entire square could hear. She declared that the divine did not belong to Portugal and that her people would no longer bow to those who stole their kin. The silence that followed was absolute. The Portuguese officers did not debate her. They did not retreat. They seized her, dragged her to the center of the market, and stacked dry timber around her feet. She did not scream when the torch touched the wood. She watched them, her eyes fixed on the horizon, until the heat turned the air to ash. The fire consumed her, but her words remained in the dirt, etched into the history of the land. Nana pulled the braided cord tight. The sound of the leather rubbing against itself was sharp, like a dry branch snapping. The golden light in the room dimmed as if the air itself were holding its breath. She smoothed the cover with a trembling hand, sealing the history away. "If you are ready, you will hear the rest tomorrow," she whispered. Kofi stood up, his jaw set. He stared at the journal, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the side of the chair. "We can handle it," he said. His voice was steady, too steady for a boy who had just heard of a death by fire. Amara sat frozen, her eyes darting between the book and the kitchen door. The silence hung heavy, filled with the phantom scent of smoke and the weight of centuries. Nana looked at them, her gaze lingering on their faces as if she were seeing through their skin to the resolve beneath. She leaned forward, the shadows catching the deep lines around her eyes. She whispered, "That is exactly what she said." Right before they lit the fire, the room went cold. Neither of the children moved. The weight of the story settled into the floorboards, anchored by the truth that some lessons are paid for in blood.